We've had quite a weekend, to be quite honest, so I look a bit jaded. It's because I am. We spent 10 hours at the Shakespeare Centre yesterday, Jane and I and a few other people, doing fundraising for Isaac's primary school. And it was really good. It was great to have a few people from church do the Christmas wrap, which was a great witness to all the people that came along, and it was just really encouraging that we were able to have some really good conversations with people, and it kind of feeds into what I'm going to be talking about this morning. So my title is, talking on vision and values, is Community Outreach and Evangelism, which kind of carries on from what we've been hearing about the last couple of weeks. And I apologise for, again, I can follow on from Ed, that we've got no slides this morning because I was at Shakespeare Centre 10 hours yesterday and quite a few hours Friday night setting up. Doing a PowerPoint really had to go out the window. So, I was not at the church weekend away, many of you were, Jane was. And I listened to Martin Charlesworthy's preach, and I listened last week to Ed's preach, and both of which covered a lot of the ground that I was kind of thinking of preaching on this week. And I'm sat there last week and Ed's been in his preach, and I'm thinking, I was going to say that, I was going to bring that, but actually it kind of made me focus in on carrying on, really, from and building on what both of those guys have brought over the last 2 weeks. So, the first question I want to ask is, why outreach? You'll have to excuse me, I've got it all on my laptop because our printer's broken at home, so I'm going to be constantly scrolling down. But the world would say, why be concerned with outreach? I'm okay. Look after yourselves. Others are not your concern. They're responsible for their own actions, responsible for themselves, their own destiny. Why should I care about that? I am saved. I am forgiven. I am sanctified. I am a new creation. I am set free. I'm free from the shackles of sin and death. I have an eternity in heaven. I have this assurance, job done. I'm not concerned with anybody else. I'm okay, Jack. There's no need for me to stand here, really. I might as well pack up and go home. We're all fine. But the truth is, if this world's attitude was our attitude in church and out of church, then I would suggest that pretty much everyone here this morning would not be here today. Okay? So probably 99.9% of us became Christians because of the testimony, outreach, and influence of other Christians in our lives. So that might have been through a Christian upbringing, might have been through example of other Christians, through friendships, community, colleagues in the workplace, and a whole host of other things. So if we were to hold on to the attitude of, well, I'm okay, then all we see is church stagnation and decline, which we are seeing in churches across this land, to be honest. And it actually saddens me when I hear people saying that their Christian faith is a private thing. It's between them and God. Actually, the Holy Spirit in us should affect everything that we are and everything that we do. So God chooses us to shine the light of Jesus into the community and the world around us. So I was very encouraged by what Eileen brought, because it was absolutely on the nail, really, with where I'm going this morning. So if you want to take down a notes of Bible readings. I'm going to go through a whole host of ones now that really grasp where we're going this morning. So the first one is Mark 16, verse 15. He said to them, "Go into all the world and preach the gospel to all creation." Romans 10:14. I apologize for a whole host of different ones, but it just kind of really reiterates. How then can they call on the one that they have not believed in? And how can they believe in the one whom they have not heard? How can they hear without someone preaching to them? Matthew 28:19. You probably all know this one. "Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit." Matthew 25, verses 35 to 40. It's a bit of a longer one. "For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me." Then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison or go to visit you?" The king will reply, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." Acts 1:8. "But you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes on you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem and in all Judea and Samaria to the ends of the earth." Galatians 2:10. "All they asked was that we should continue to remember the poor, the very thing I'd been eager to do all along." And finally, Acts 20, verse 35, "In everything I did, I showed you that by this kind of hard work, we must help the weak, remembering the words of the Lord Jesus himself said, 'It's more blessed to give than to receive.'" So it's clear here in the Bible that we have a command to go and do. It's to take the gospel with us, to care for the marginalized, and to minister to the needs of those in need and show compassion to the poor. Now, these are some of our values here at King's Church Kendal. And we don't actually go out and do these things because we are commanded to. We do so because it's written here in our hearts. It's part of our DNA as Christians. When God created us, he made mankind in his image. Now, that wasn't a physical image, but it was a character. Okay, it was his character written in us. So his spirit, heart, and love. But when sin entered the world, that image of God in us was broken. Unconditional love became conditional. Selflessness became selfishness. We and us became I. Mankind almost became like a stick of rock, and we've heard that before, haven't we? But a stick of rock with nothing on the inside. Outside, it looks much the same, but underneath, it's completely different. When we became Christians and the Spirit filled us, the character of God was rewritten right through the inside, very much like that writing that you see in a stick of rock. Our hearts then became one of compassion, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. So then, our heart and our motivation to see the lost saved and our compassion for those in need does not come first and foremost from those commands and a compulsion of fear and need to obey those commands, but it comes from the Spirit of God inside of us. His character, his image, his heart in our hearts gives us that desire to do those things that are written here in this book. We have a desire to see people know Jesus, a desire to see them set free, a desire to see them saved, forgiven, sanctified, no longer under that power of sin and death, a desire to see them be given an eternity in heaven, to be released from poverty, hunger, depression, anxiety, loneliness, fear, anxiety, and a whole range of other things. These are our values, and they are written here, right in our hearts, by the God who changes lives from the inside out. So the next question is, who is our community? So community is usually based around something that we have in common, i.e. common unity, community. I'm losing me. So for us here this morning, we are the church community. Many of us outside of this place here have community based around maybe our small groups, maybe activities, might be sports, might be interests. A lot of us with kids or that had kids have had community based around our kids' activities, or we might have a community based around our workplace. But it's very likely that all of us would say that we're part of many different communities. But probably, most probably, we'd put most of our time into a very small number of those that we have most in common with. And generally for us as Christians, that's the church community. Now there's absolutely nothing wrong, let me reiterate, there's nothing wrong with spending time with our fellow Christians, building relationships, encouraging and supporting one another. However, if that's our only community, then how do we reach the world around us? Now, we could undertake a massive advertising campaign, do that before the next weekend, and invite people to our gospel events and carol services and cafe churches and things like that. Could get out onto the streets and produce online materials, podcasts. We could go door to door. And there's nothing wrong with any of these. But the reality is that most of our opportunities to outreach and spread the gospel comes from personal interaction with people in the communities around us. So a few days ago, in my daily devotionals, and actually, if you do the Nicky Gumbel Bible in 1 year, you might pick up on a few of the things here. There's a lot of things this week in his devotionals that have really fed in to what I'm bringing this morning. So, Nicky Gumbel one day this week quoted an American pastor and author called John Maxwell. I'd not heard of him, but he quotes all kinds of people, does Nicky Gumbel, in the course of a year. Now, John Maxwell states that 89% of people, the learning comes from visual stimulation, 10% from audible stimulation, and 1% from other senses. So you hear, so yes, yes, or yes, as you were demonstrating. So what you hear, you understand, but what you see, you believe. Yeah, so I've got something back here. Now, for those of you that know when I do involve people, I've gradually got less and less people actually wanting to volunteer. But I can assure you this morning that any volunteers will be very happy. Okay. So I've got some of Hannah's cakes here left over from yesterday. Now I could tell you all about Hannah's cakes and how good they are and how nice they look and how lovely they taste and all the rest of it, but you get a much better sense, wouldn't you, of how good Hannah's cakes are if you could actually see them, and even better if you could taste and experience them. So I've got 4 of Hannah's wonderful reindeer cakes here. So the first 4 people, I'll let one of you, because I know you've got a head start. The first 4 people can come and taste and take one of these and eat them now. Yeah. Yeah, okay, that's good. Right, only another 3 people. Now, shall I go down? Anybody? Anybody want one? Anyone at this side? Other you 2 ladies want one? So those of you that have started to eat them, is the actually being able to see them and taste them much better than just hearing about it. I'm sure you'll understand a lot more about how good those cakes are than those of you that I just told them about. And I'm probably very disappointed now that you haven't got that opportunity to have any. So our best witness in our community is people's experience of Christ in us. Much more effective than what we tell to those that don't know us. And even better is through relationships built over time, with us being the light of Jesus in our communities. So this is when we get the chance to speak into situations because Jesus shines through us. Christ in us makes us so different from those around us that they can't help noticing. It's John 8, verse 12. Jesus said, "I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but have the light of life." And then Matthew 5, verses 14 to 16. "You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house." So we talked a little bit over the last few months of that image that I had about that lit cross above Preston Patrick Church. And us, you guys, being a visible light in Kendal and the district. And also that there is a number of lit crosses around Kendal and this area. Now, I believe that as a church, we are a very visible light of Jesus in our community through the food bank. And across the town, the food bank is a beacon in the darkness of need. It's a great example of the love of Jesus into desperate situations every day. Now that's a powerful light, isn't it, into this town of Kendal. But that isn't the only light. There's several different lights going out from here into our community. So there's We heard this morning the walking group that's taking place this week reaches out to a whole wide range of people. There's ladies do coffee mornings, men's film nights, curry nights, which we haven't done for a while. We need to revisit that one. I enjoy a good curry night. Quiz nights. Did one of those up at Blaithwaite, and I always like a good quiz night as well. We did pizza nights at the farm, and a year this weekend we did the live nativity. Other churches as well and organisations in the area bring the light of Jesus into our community. Manor House, that Nina's involved in. There's homeless shelters in winter in local churches around Kendal. Winter warm spaces this year, very much relevant given the fuel crisis that we've got across our land, and much, much more. And every light that is switched on, a little bit more darkness is banished. Alistair, I meant to prep you before. Do you mind doing switching off the lights? Now, this would be a lot better example in the dark. There you go. Do you want to switch one back on again? Okay, so every light that goes on banishes the darkness. Okay, you switch some more on. You just pull them all back on, that's fine. Okay, so we've known all the darkness has been banished now, hasn't it, from out of this space. But if this was the only space that was lit, Kendal wouldn't see much light, would it? And a little bit would shine out through the windows, but actually if we've got to reach Kendal and the light of Jesus is going to shine in all sorts of different places, then that light mustn't be confined into this place or into other churches around town. That light needs to be taken out into the community around us, and the more lights that are switched on in more dark places, the less darkness and more light that we see. So, many of you have probably heard of Jackie Pullinger, and she spent most of her life working with the poor, and still working with the poor, destitute, triad, gang members, heroin and opium addicts in Hong Kong, in what they called the Walled City. Now that was a 6.5-acre space. If any of you have been to our maze, that's 6.5 acres, give you an idea of the size. It was 50,000 people lived in that. So that's more than Kendal, in a space which is probably about twice the size of the playing fields out there, actually. Probably about the size of the entire school complex. So that's an awful lot of people, isn't it? Now, she's seen thousands come off drugs through the power of the Holy Spirit. Now, she wrote that she'd spent half her life in a dark, foul-smelling place because she had a vision of another city ablaze with light. It was her dream that there was no more crying, no more death or pain. The sick were healed, addicts were set free, the hungry were filled. There were families for orphans, homes for the homeless, a new dignity for those who lived in shame. Now, when she went there, she'd no idea of how to bring this about, but with visionary zeal, imagined introducing the people of that walled city to the one who could change it all, Jesus. Now, it said that vision is a holy discontent, a deep satisfaction with what is, so what we have, combined with a clear grasp of what could be. Okay, it's a different view of. It's a picture. So a mental sight of the future that inspires hope, vision. It inspires hope. Vision without action is merely a dream. Okay? Action without vision is said to be a nightmare. But vision combined with action, can change the world. Or in this case, Kendal. Okay? So that vision of lit crosses around Kendal are us, each of us. Yeah? And that light of Jesus shining out from us wherever we are. So along with that vision, what should be our action? So the first thing we should do is pray. Okay? We seek God as to how we may be used more, how he may use us more in the communities that we're already part of. We ask him to show the light of Jesus through us into those communities. It's good to invite other Christian friends to join the communities and the groups that you're already part of. Pray for other Christians in your workplace. The workplace is actually probably the community that we spend the most time in. And I think it's fair to say the workplace is probably, as Christians, the community that we find by far the most challenging. So it may be an environment where the people and culture are very different to the one that we'd normally choose to be part of. Being a Christian in this place, in the workplace, can be really difficult. So if that is you, then we want to stand with you, and there'll be an opportunity to pray with you later on. Okay? So on the other hand, the workplace can be a great place to shine the light of Jesus in a dark place. Now, I'm fortunate to work in an environment where there are several other Christians. It's not unusual in our workplace to be openly talking about our faith, church, Jesus, because we, as the Christians, talk to each other, but we don't hide that from all those around us. And they pick up on that, and we can have conversations, and it's also how we speak and handle other things that go on in the workplace. And our workplace is not perfect by any means, and I'm sure there's a few of you here that have or do work for me and in my workplace. And yes, it doesn't always quite work out as it should, but there you go. So I was also, in my devotional again, reading about Daniel. And Daniel certainly had a pretty challenging workplace, didn't he? It was a workplace of great adversity. He'd been forcibly removed, along with many others, to a foreign country where he was forced into the service of the king there. Now, if we work in a secular workplace, we may well be able to relate in some way to Daniel and his three friends in the start of Daniel 1, I think it is. Now, they chose to cooperate with the Babylonians, who'd exiled them, or they would have been forced to. And they underwent 3 years of training to serve in the Babylonian government. They even had to change their names. And they were a bit of a mouthful, so we're not going to go there. So I won't have to pronounce them. But even though that they changed the names, the one thing that they wouldn't compromise on was their beliefs. Now, they chose not to defile themselves and refused to eat the royal foods because it had been sacrificed to the Babylonian gods. But they didn't just go against, well, I'm not going to eat this, and refuse to do that, because they knew that those that had authority on them could have forced them to. What they did was they worked with them and came to an arrangement to eat just vegetables, which they knew hadn't been defiled, and chose just to drink water. They worked with them, and they saw, actually, that they were much healthier, and the benefit for all those others in their service. Now, I have to say, as a livestock farmer, I've often wondered in 10 days of eating vegetables, and now Toby's not here this morning, as a vegetarian he would say, oh, absolutely, eating vegetables is does you so much good. And so I did actually, it was a bit of an aside, I had a look into what the Babylonians ate, because it's intrigued me, and I thought it's not possible over such a short period. And actually the diet wasn't bad. They ate a lot of stews, which were made up all of fresh ingredients. So I thought, well, that can't be it. But actually what I did learn was that the Babylonians worshipped a wine goddess and other wine deities, and regularly used both beer and wine as offerings to their gods. So it wasn't just about the food which was the issue, it was what they were drinking as well. But within that, they also had an ancient set of laws that decreed a daily beer ration to their citizens. And that was distributed according to their social standing. So if you were a labourer, you received 2 litres of beer a day. Yeah, that's you'd think that was quite a lot, wouldn't you? But Daniel and his friends and colleagues worked as administrators in the government. And their allocation was 5 litres of beer a day. Now that's almost 9 pints. So if you were to drink 9 pints of 9 pints of beer a day, it's little wonder after 10 days of not drinking that much alcohol that they looked and felt an awful lot better. So that's just a bit of an aside, but I'd often sort of wondered why they were as they were. Now, in this example, God worked through Daniel and his friends in his workplace. It was a place where his faith was completely alien to everybody around, but he chose not to compromise his faith, and it was a great witness to all of those who knew him. Now, it's great to pray into and hear about those communities that we're already involved in, but what I want to focus on, I'm going to have to do it quick as well, is where and how we reach beyond our current communities, and particularly into groups of people who aren't like us. And I would suggest for most of us, our communities do look like us. It's probably based around our age, our interest, our background, sports, and a whole host of other things. But if we're serious about being the light of Jesus into dark places, we need to be looking at how we build community with people that we have little or nothing in common with. So who was Jesus' community? Well, it certainly wasn't made up of people like him, was it? So there was working class fishermen, there was the poor, there was the needy, there was the sick, there was prostitutes, middle class tax collectors, there was even some Romans and Pharisees. And none of these had much in common with Jesus, did they? But Jesus lived his life with them, he ate with them, he spoke with them, he celebrated, he mourned, he shared joy with them, and he was with them even in great times of fear. And he ultimately died in front of them and for them. Now, most of you who know me well know that I'm not the kind of person who likes to sit around and talk and listen and to the theories of the whys and the wherefores. Jane's laughing here. She knows I hate sitting down and listening and chatting about stuff when I can get on with it. I always want to get out there and do stuff. So how and what do we do? Well, David, Ed and I can only do so much in organising and putting things together. Our role is much more in equipping and encouraging, leading and releasing you guys into the vision. It was interesting to hear Martin talk about the benefits of having a building resource, and what he brought actually greatly challenged me. Recently, we've been looking at the resource that we have in the Shakespeare Centre and how well that meets the needs of the church, and that would a different building and another location help us spread the message of Jesus better in this town. Now that's a fairly valid question. It's one that we need to keep looking at from time to time. But what Martin really brought home to me was not the question of how much the building meets the needs of the church, but more relevant really was how our existing building that we already have, how we use that in shining the light of Jesus in our community. And that's done amazingly well, Alistair and Linda, through the food bank. But aside from that, we could use that space, that building, for a lot more to reach the people of Kendal. So what we do have there is a warm space. It's right in the centre of town. It's not great for parking, but it's great for people walking in and people that live close by. And it offers many different means for us to reach the community around us. Now, our small group recently, since lockdown actually, has been doing pizza nights on a Friday night, and it's been amazing to be able to bring lots of our friends, works colleagues, family together with other people from church and build relationships and community. And Jane was particularly challenged at the weekend away that we can use that actually to reach a wider community than what we're currently doing. So what we're intending doing from the end of January, one Friday night a month, is to take our pizza night that we've been doing into the Shakespeare Centre, and then that will open up to a much wider group of people that we won't normally have contact with. So there'll be more about that a little bit nearer the time. There's possibility of opening a games group to do games also using the centre. Well, quickly we're going to move on actually into a time of worship and ministry. If I could have the guys back to the front. And it's going to be an opportunity to pray that God will give us the tools, ideas, and abilities to shine the light of Jesus into the communities, that by His Spirit lead us into new areas to reach out and bless the town around us. Now, there are a few areas that I'd like to pray, and I've asked David and Ed to come up and we'll pray for people in. So that first one will be us in the workplace. That's all of us. That like Daniel, who was in a very challenging position, that you would not compromise your faith and that God would work through you to bring the light of Jesus into that workplace. Our existing communities, that God would bring breakthroughs in those groups, a new willingness to talk about our faith, and open ears for people to hear about Jesus. Now, new places that we can take the light of Jesus, and that every time that we take the light of Jesus into new places, that banishes more darkness. And finally, that encouraging quote from Jackie Pullinger: vision combined with action can change the world. Vision with action can change Kendal. Okay, so I'm going to ask Ed to come up and lead us in that time of ministry, because I want to have prayer for us, for me and for Jane, for what we're stepping out into. But if God's really spoken to you this morning, we'd love to be able to pray with you and release you into new areas of reaching community. And for those in the workplace, really pray for you as well, that you'd be able to bring the light of Jesus there.